Greetings, friends! Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magique. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined again by my cherry red, mint, vintage, and murderous co-host,
Alex Dandino.
That's right. I do feel bad when I said break it down. I did a little flex, and it's weird. I feel restrained without my hangover tank top on, so... Joke's really on you, Alex. That's a throwback.
Well done. Wow.
Yeah. All right, guys, if you're joining us tonight, we hope you're enjoying yourself. We hope you always enjoy yourself here. And if you do, we would love to ask you a favor. Please take a second and leave us a rating and review wherever you find the pod, especially if that happens to be Apple Podcast app. That does help us out enormously. And we've seen some of you doing that, and we appreciate that a lot. Thanks, guys. We're on every social media platform that you're on. You can get at us anywhere there. You can also email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, with your ideas for movie we should cover, new stuff, YouTube-only segments, all that good stuff, guest host, anything, themes, months, double features. We want to hear from you guys. So that's how you can get a hold of us. You can also see our faces, as well as hear our voices, along with hear our voices. I'll just keep saying things so all the worlds fall in there. On our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. If you want to see some stuff, we do some fun new stuff over there. Always working on new content to fill the YouTube up. So find us there. All right, guys. Two more joyous film entries in our month of Carpenter. The pod calls it Carpenter, right? This month, we needed the biggest infusion of the most fun and badass movies we could think of. No one makes that movie better than John Carpenter. The last two movies were actually our final two finishers in our poll for the listeners of which John Carpenter movies must we include in our month. And so that will be The Fog, which won, and number 2, Christine, which we're covering tonight. I can't say enough how much I think these two movies, kind of in that back-to-back little era, right? The very early 80s. Halloween, obviously, is John Carpenter's master horror opus. I think The Thing is number 2. I mean, they're both right there in what they do, right? One's a little more subtle and sets some rules. The other one kind of blows the roof off of everything. I think both The Fog and Christine are dramatically underrated horror masterpieces. Actually, now I'm just remembering that we recorded this. We already talked about how The Fog's a masterpiece.
Talked about The Fog.
So this is the last this is the last hurrah with John Carpenter, which is fitting because Christine is essentially a movie about, dang, it's hard to be a white guy that doesn't succeed enough. And so here we go. I think Christine, I love The Fog, right? The Fog has this imagery and the ghost, it's visceral. The setting just drips with this kind of gothic old Universal movie fun almost. This one is so wildly different, but I actually think it might be the most impressive of John Carpenter's horror movies because, to be fair, and also when I talked to you about this, I don't know when the last time you'd seen this was, but it was kind of like the dumb killer car movie, and I think it gets lumped in with those. This movie is amazingly well crafted.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think my parents listen to the pod. I found this out like 2 weeks ago, and
shout out my mom's guy Steve listens to the pod. Shouts out.
Yeah, so my parents listen, and they usually like take a month to like. So they're like, "What's coming next month?" I'm like, "Well, we're doing John Carpenter movies." Like, "Oh, what's the?" And so I listed them off. I'm like, Christine, and then. My dad, because of Family Guy, my dad's like, "Oh, is that the Killer Lamp movie?" And I'm like, "Yes, essentially." But like, that's what's interesting to me about this is like it's essentially been relegated to this like sort of weird, like, offshoot Stephen King, like Stephen King and his killer objects, whatever, clowns, cars, whatever. This movie though is so much more than that. Like the presentation of it, like I've never read Christine. I can say definitively I have absolutely no idea what the book is like. I can tell you the movie is like borderline for me this like psychosexual exploration of male masculinity. It's pretty fascinating. Like Arnie ends up being this avatar for life in general when it's just like when you're a white guy born on second base and you can't even get to third, like go get some fucking Boss Chevy Fury or whatever the car is. It's so weird. Like, it is just about it's about the idolatry we have for objects, but then also the idolatry we have for women in a lot of ways, because the car is a woman. And I mean, a lot of the time for me, the car itself was not. There's not evidence that the car itself was jealous of other women. I think actually this is just Arnie's like inflicting this sort of like pain and this sort of self-satisfaction onto the car based on some other scenes from the movie itself. Because I was reading the original book. Apparently, the idea is that the guy who originally like sat in the car, it's his ghost living in the car itself. So he's like, it's like
right.
his vengeful ghost. I personally prefer
the movie debunks that pretty fast. Although
almost
the idea
immediately,
that it's a car factory worker, cigar smoking, old African American gentleman who's just getting his revenge on all the dipshit whites that drive the car, actually works pretty well for me. If we're being, no, I think what this movie does, right, is it gets relegated with like Maximum Overdrive and Joy, like all these like big killer car movies, right? That
sure.
I've been outed on this a lot. Car movies not necessarily my thing, right? Death Proof, yes. Other car movies,
Wow, not a big Tokyo Drift guy, huh? All right, cool.
Yeah,
good to know.
I don't Fast or Furious, right?
You'll learn new stuff every day about people.
In the Griffey house where slow and even killed. That's highway. No, but that's what I mean. Is like this one is really so much more than that. And I think it's the characters, right? It's that classic Stephen King coming of age story. You just happen to be coming in and all over a car. What is great about it, though, is that I think it's that classic phase where Stephen King does this really well, where he puts his characters in this in-between world, right? Here's what I thought and hoped I would be at this phase, and then here's the chasm between what I wish I was, right? Or what I actually am. And in that gulf becomes this, abyss of horrors, right? You see that a little bit with Jack Torrance, and, a lot of his characters have this fault, right? Even the losers in it to a more extreme degree.
Yeah.
And Arnie in this one, it's funny because he starts off as a fairly sympathetic character, right? And what happens is what I like the most that really struck me this time is I like the idea of, it's weird because both this and The Fog feel really prescient to today, right? Right as The Fog's
a little too much, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like the old mayor arguing for statues of, ill-gotten figures of history, right?
Yeah.
You're like, wow, is this 2020? Christine is kind of the same. We really wish we could go back to this idealized time, right? Yeah. And for a lot of Americans and American men in the time that this movie was made, that was this era of, oh, look at the new, I was going to say Model T, but I know that's like the first fucking car. I don't know what this is, the model,
I believe
Christine,
the car in
whatever.
the book is apparently supposed to be a Chevy Fury.
I mean, that's a little on the nose for what we've seen, but also I don't give a fuck about cars. So let's just call it the big red ones, right?
Yeah,
the ones where you're like, I can get a girl in here and, take her bra off and have some fun, have some real Cracker Jacks up on the hill, right? That time of life, right? This
Pleasantville.
Yeah, we even see Arnie begin to morph into this Fonzarelli character.
Yeah, he does a little bit of a greaser
so that he can battle the steroid John Travolta from Welcome Back, Carter, and it's this weird, like, what is happening in this battle of yours? But that becomes this fun thing of it's a guy trying to craft himself into what he should be, but through the eyes of what was once what a man should. You know what I mean? There's a lot of facade in this car or in this show, and I think a car, like a showpiece car, is actually a perfect symbolic parallel for what's happening with these dudes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just such a. I got to be honest, like when I turned it on, because I had read a lot about it beforehand, I remember thinking when we decided we were going to watch it, I'm like, I remember just not liking Christine, like thinking it was really simplistic and kind of like boring. And reading more about it, this is also like one of this movie that John Carpenter made that he like had no, as he puts it, this is his first like time he's ever written or directed a movie for a job rather than like done it because it was a passion project. So it's interesting to go in with that lens because then you watch it and honestly it might be one of his most I mean, maybe one of like for me, like one of some of his most lasting imagery, like short of obviously like Halloween and that kind of stuff. Like scenes in this movie are incredible and so well crafted and like so well scored and all kinds of stuff. Like everything works for me in Christine, and it's really fascinating. But I mean, ultimately, I love that. I love the idea that this is just like it's not about the car. It's about what the car represents. It's about what Arnie becomes because he starts to not just idolize this car, but literally fall in love with it. Which is why I texted you in the middle of it and said, I have a theory that this is the forgotten pilot for My Weird Obsession, that reality show on TLC. Because there's a guy on that.
Everyone's seen that one episode. I just like to fuck my car.
There's an episode that guy just fucks his car, and I'm like, is that just Christine? Like, but then I thought about it, and I was like, wait.
You know what's funny about that? Because if I remember right, he not only fucked his car, but he got in trouble for trying to fuck a lot of cars.
No, I don't think, did he? I thought he was.
Maybe I read that after the fact. That could be fake news for all I know.
I thought he was carmogamous.
Well, you know what Chris Rock said in his famous comedy bit, you show me a 10 that's a car, and I'll show you the guy that's tired of fucking it, right? Like, even the most cherry mint, I don't know, like, what car would Jerry Seinfeld most want to hump?
Right.
Eventually, he's going to go find a Fiesta.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. I realized the one burning question I had at the end of this movie is, like, what does the guy from My Weird Obsession think about this? Because, honestly, above all else, I am very curious. Like, does he find this movie offensive? Is, like, the way the car treated so, like, appalling to him, but he really relates to Arnie? Like, that is like the ultimate idolatry to me, is like, how does the guy from My Weird Obsession who fucks his car feel about a movie that literally is about a guy who falls in love with his car to the point where he's willing to die for it?
So granted, it's like essentially you want Ted Bundy to watch Henry and be like, yay, nay?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm down.
It is interesting, right? And
also, there's one particular scene we'll talk about that I'm like, this is like the scene.
Also, I think there's a couple. Like, I think there are a couple, semi-twisted metal eroticism moments in here. But what I was going to get to is your point on this was John Carpenter doing a job movie, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, obviously, a lot of directors do job movies. Some directors do exclusively job movies, and they're really good at that kind of flick. What I think you see, though, is that John Carpenter's touch really early lets you know this is a different kind of movie. Yeah. And I think the opening in the car factory is just unbelievably beautifully shot, right?
Yeah,
so you kind of have this soft focus floating through this era of men who had jobs, working with their hands, building the things that we went to drive the other things we don't need, right? And now we see this fucking monolith we built upon that model, right? Which is, kind of the whole point of the movie is like, yeah, maybe that wasn't the best fucking idea, but whatever. And you see this car line, right? And there's this one cherry car, and a guy gets in and fucking ashes in it. In the shots, though, they do this great job of, it is a car line where everything's the same but this one, right? They all kind of look like these beige plain cars, and this one really sticks out. And the interesting motif, right? They do these great predatory shots. I love the shot of the guy walking, and we're watching it through Christine's rear view mirror, right? Mm-hmm. He opens the door, a body falls out. He's trying to honk, and then getting the hood slamming, right? Like the jaws of a beast. Yeah. He's such a fucking cool opening. Also cool about that is we haven't yet discovered that there's anything truly supernatural about Christine, right? So it's just this really cool man being seduced by the image of what this car could be or what he could be in this car. And it sets up that kind of predatory siren's call. Because that's the scene that really jumped out at me this viewing, right? There's a couple things I had big questions about in the missing years, right? Like Jesus just disappears in the Bible. He's like, what's up? I got the answers. Christine kind of does that, right? Like she's just out sloughing it, right? In this guy's yard up on the cinder blocks and shit.
Right.
And we know for a fact that she came back to his brother, right? Everyone who's been in that car's died, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. I had two questions in this moment about the kind of missing years of Christine, right? One, this is a car we know can fucking fix itself and drive to find a new fucking dingus, right?
Right.
Like she could just drive and park herself on a used car lot and get another, you know, overweight guy who's not pleased with his wife who wants to, you know, wear a leather jacket and go finger bang. Those guys exist everywhere, right? We all have neighbors. They're everywhere.
Dime a dozen.
Why does Christine not do that, right? So there is this extra, you know, Christine letting herself fall into disrepair. The answer I had for this, I don't know if you buy this, that fucking guy, the creepy old man, I wonder if that's the guy whose car it actually was, right? Because he keeps talking about it was his brother's car. The one thing I noticed, though, is that Arnie starts mutating into the Fonz. He starts using the exact phrases that guy used, which maybe he uses his brother's phrase. But maybe that's why Christine is truly bonded to her drivers, right? We see some moments of that later. So maybe he's starving Christine and she's in disrepair as his own punishment for what he did. And that explains why Christine hasn't been out hunting.
I'd say either that or she was a scorned Autobot, and this is like she's just like slumming it now.
She didn't. She just literally needed one Energon cube.
Yeah, but you know, Optimus Prime was like, "Be gone, ho," and that was Christine.
Be gone, thought. Look away. Because Optimus Prime makes TikToks now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just him kicking Christine in the ass. Yes, I know. I'm old enough to not know what that is. So miss me with your ats.
No, but to your point, though, I think it's possible. Like, I don't see why it wouldn't be. Like, maybe she's in pursuit of that first owner. Maybe he ultimately took the best care of her, which is why the brother gets crunched. So I don't know.
But see, this is kind of the point I'm making is in this viewing, I had forgotten that this was more symbiotic, right? Yeah. It's kind of the thing that because you remember, like you said, this movie has a lot of classic imagery and awesome, like the Ghost Rider Christine chase, and you're like, this shit is amazing, right? Christine crunching herself to go in the out. We'll get there. There's so many amazing moments, and I remembered the moment of Christine deconstructing herself. It's one of the coolest. It might be the coolest car scene in any movie. I know car guys out there, but you're like, I'm sorry, that's just cooler than seeing a guy go on making a turn. That's not cool to me. A car unexploding itself is fucking undeniably cool.
Yes.
And so this time there was this, the them working togetherness, I guess, had been lost on me in my previous viewings. I thought it was just a guy gets in a car that wants to kill. This is very different, right? Yeah. So then you're left with these questions, right? Like, why doesn't she need to go look for a new owner, right? Why wouldn't Christine want a new owner as much as a guy wants that car, right? The reason Christine exists is to drive around and glorify someone and herself, right? She plays the music from the golden era, right? This siren song, like, why do that? Right. You know? And then you're sitting there asking yourself, so Arnie has to know, because this is another question I had. Did Christine repair herself after Arnie had put in enough work, right? We kind of see it looks like Arnie's about to all the way stuff himself into some part of Christine. Next time we see the car, she is mint and cherry in a way that he could not achieve on his own.
Right. Well, I mean, that part we're talking about when she reconstructs herself.
Right. So like, this is the question, right? This gets to my simpatico nature. He comes in one day, and he's to assume either she did this himself for his, he's like Jack in the nut stock, right? He just like dropped this magical armorall that like redid this whole car.
Right.
Doesn't seem wildly concerned about it. Because the scene when he goes, okay, show me. Right?
Which is
and then
like
it's like
super sexual.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is the same music as like someone exposing their tits in a movie.
I mean, but more to that, it's even
knew,
shot.
And that's when he's saying, show me right now.
I mean, to me, it's even shot the way like scenes where like women are like where men are just sitting there like, show me. Like, draw me like one of your French girls. Like, even that kind of stuff. It's really, it feels that way. Like, it's shot in this way. You're like, this is super sexual. Not just because of the music, but like,
Leonardo DiCaprio's up in one of the pauper apartments in the top of the garage. And he's like, guys, I can't keep my easel still. This is too hot. It's all
Yeah,
off
like
kilter.
like the look on Arnie's face while Christine is reconstructing herself. I was sitting there. I'm like, if John Carpenter tilted the camera like a quarter inch down, you could just see the tip of his fully torqued erect.
Yeah.
And it's just
Arnie's just there shifting his own gears.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Arnie's definitely in manual transmission at this point.
Yes, yeah. Oh, he's like, only manual. You know what I mean? But the question becomes, though, right? Yeah. Is that because I think all of us might look like that if we saw this happening with our own car.
Sure.
We'd be like, oh, fuck, I've got a magical car. Now, whether that's good magic, dark magic, whatever, blood magic, who knows? He doesn't seem taken aback by the magic.
No. But I think
as
at
much
that
as
point,
just but this gets to the point, though, right?
Right.
Because I think Christine and him dating the new girl, all this stuff has that same vibe. This is something that makes him special.
Yeah. It's that seduction. Like, it's not just him being in love with the car. It's the car deciding, like, this is the new ish. Like, he's seduced by not just the beauty of, like, the car itself, but, like, the feeling that it gives, like, feeling of power that it gives him. The drive-in scene's a great example. He's sitting there arguing with his girl. She's like, she literally, like, punches the seat, and he's like, don't do that. Like,
but
again,
also,
it's just,
don't do that. Don't destroy property when you're arguing with each other.
punching a leather seat certainly does not constitute destruction of property.
What if she put a nick in it? And then all of a sudden you got that one little spot, a little fuzzy sticking out. You're like, well, now I got to play with that every time I'm driving. Then it becomes a gaping maw in your
I
emotional
like what you
core.
said, though, where it's symbiotic. Like, it is a symbiotic. Because I think that what's interesting, you bring it up, and it's the fact that he's unfazed by the magic of this car. I think at that point, he's fully in the trance of, like, okay, I don't care what it is about this car. This car is mine, though. Like, I think it's a seduction.
Okay, now that's the line,
knowledge.
right? What is cool is because this movie goes out of our way to show us is that every version of someone showing love is they love you as much as what you can do for them, right? Whether it's every guy wanting the new girl because she's the new girl, the parents, Arnie in the car and the new girl. Even the guys, there's when they're down to like two henchmen left, right? There's just a lady coming out of the gas station like, I want her to come along for the ride. It's like, get in the car, Garfunkel. Like, come on. You know you got no moves. Like, what the fuck are you doing? But he's like, yeah, come over here. We're going to, I'll rev my engine. Right. I'm just making a lot of grotesque car sounds. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're really, 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 really
I'm really into it. I'm loving it.
Are you a car guy now?
I think can I get on Comedians in Cars with Coffee? Most of the time, someone go, hey, Jerry. And then manually shift myself in front of him and get thrown off the show forever. But that's what I mean, though, right? It's all about, I love you as much as you can do something for me. And actually, like, that even extends to the bromance at the heart of the movie, which is pretty fascinating, which is Dennis and Arnie. Because Dennis is the classic jock, but even Dennis is portrayed as a weakened male archetype, right? Because he is the classic jock, but he's really nice to the bullies and has a bad knee, which I thought was this cool addition to the classic jock character, right? Like, he seems like an actual good, caring guy. Right. But then even Arnie, right? Like, because maybe that's why he does it. Oh, look, it makes me look cool and sensitive and whatnot. It never feels like they should be friends. Maybe they were for a long time. But then you see it when it flips, and all of a sudden he's not giving Arnie anything, right? Like an access to a ride or women.
Right.
He just shows up at the hospital. He's like, good thing you're not crippled. Here's 3 beers and 2 candles in elaborate candlestick holders. Fuck you. Happy Thanksgiving. In one of the weirdest friendship scenes in all of movie history. But that's what I mean, right? Everything in this movie is, I love you as much as you are helping me build the monument to myself. Every character in this car is a fucking old junker that needs to be refilled from the landfill of other junkers that fill this high school in town.
Right. I mean, it's a fascinating, like, psychological experiment in general. Is like, what is it that you need? Like, what is it that you need from this inanimate object? Like, for me, Arnie's relationship with Christine obviously, like, changes throughout the movie because it begins innocently, and again, it just literally lives the course of, like, an abusive relationship, which is really fascinating. Like, And of course it ends tragically, as all abusive relationships do. But at the same time, like, his relationships with the other people, particularly Dennis and his girlfriend surrounding him, they change as well. And I mean, really what it is like, what happens to people, particularly people who maybe don't find themselves to be like lucky, I would say, like people who maybe feel like, people who have a chip on their shoulder, people who feel like they maybe don't have all the, like, the deck is stacked against them. If they somehow got one of those cards from that deck, how would it change them? And the real question is, was Arnie always like this, or is it Christine influencing him? Because I personally think that you could make the argument that this was always in Arnie. Arnie was just being let loose by the magic of Christine, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, also, I think you see that a lot. I would say that's true because he somewhat seems to be emulating the steroid Travolta guy, right?
Right, totally.
So it feels like, you know, when we see, and I think that's another kind of a great, like, John Carpenter add-on, right? Like, when you give a guy something like this and he's just so good that this is almost a movie that should be beneath him, he adds those extra touches. Because I thought it was the very moment that the bully steps on his glasses, right? That now Arnie can't see the reality he's always known. This is kind of my eyes are now freed. So, you know, is a classic, like, just picking on a bully move. But then when you get it back, his glasses are skewed and taped up. That's when he sees the car and he's like, fucking stop. I gotta fucking buy this rust bucket. And, you know, now he is seeing a path, right? In that car, in that moment, on that day, he sees this path to being that guy, the guy that's tough and not taking shit, telling teachers to fuck off and carrying little tiny blades around with him. You know, he's like, this could be me. Right. And you see that change, right? I don't want to rely on Dennis to stand up for me and tell the teacher what happened, right? I want to fucking do it. I want to tell my parents to suck it. And so that's just one of those really cool, I think what you see is that, yeah, this was always there, right? It's almost like a reverse Superman. Right, like he takes off the glasses and just becomes like a shitty, you know, greaser instead of a Kryptonian, you know, superhero.
Right, but I mean that's exactly what it is, though. It's the proliferation of the want. You know, it's you know, the nerd character in Grease wants to be Danny Zuko. But he's not Danny Zuko. So what gives him the ability to be?
If his fucking car could eat Danny Zuko.
Right, that makes things different. I mean,
it also makes Grease an infinitely better movie.
I mean, yeah, it makes the term Grease lightning very different. You know?
Dude. So when you know that at the end they're like riding off in the car together, you're like, well, she'll be dead soon, and he'll be chugging beers and playing chicken in no time. A gaunt shell of himself.
But that's like, I mean, like, I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. Is like it's not the inanimate, like it's. The inanimate object, and granted, Christine's not an inanimate object, obviously, but it's the magic of Christine. I think is reflective only of the person who holds her up. Like Arnie absolutely could have been that kind of bastard person because he's chasing a want. He always wants to be a different kind of person. People like him for who he is, but he wants to be somebody else. And I think that is like. That's the great thing about the story itself, and that's the great thing about Christine as this like avatar of evil, because Christine's really not evil. She's just a reflection of the person who's driving her.
Okay, now I would argue against that slightly, because why does Christine... I mean, I know a lot of us have bad taste in the opposite sex or partners, per se, right? Like, that's a classic trope is, hey, I just love bad boys, right? That's how my wife snagged me. She was just into bad boys. You know, Fonzarelli's in the corner, but neither here nor there.
Sure.
Why does Christine just have to pick these dickholes, right? So it's like two questions. Like, did the first guy, she was like, oh, he's a family man. It'll be fine. He'll ride around in me. You know, I'll have some car seats and goldfish stuffed in my crevasses. But then I'll also get to drive him to college. And, you know, like, Christine could have been the American car. Sure. Why'd she start carbon monoxide poisoning everyone?
Well,
and making that guy become a gaunt alcoholic who's mean to everyone and calls everyone shitters. Because Christine, maybe that's the fuel she needs is not love.
Right. I mean, I don't mean to say Christine is not evil. It's an evil car, but I think that she's only as evil as the person who's driving her. And I think that's a big part
Right.
of it.
But that's what I'm saying is I think she only, like, she could have been like, hey, Dennis. Like, when Dennis sneaks in and she scares him off, she should have been like, come closer, baby. Like, don't play the scary, like, you know, oh, bad things are happening. Play like, splish splash, we're having a bath. Hop on in. Let's go.
Right. I mean, I don't know.
She didn't want a Dennis. She wanted
No,
an
she
Arnie.
wanted Arnie. And again, like, it's because, Dennis knows. This is going to sound bad, but I also think it's probably true of the movie. Dennis knows who he is. Like, he's aware. Like, he's.
That doesn't sound bad at all. I thought you were going to say some crazy shit.
No, Dennis knows who he is. It's Arnie who is insecure and wants to be somebody else entirely. Like, again, I think Christine is only as powerful as you let her be, as you let her become. So, like, all that evil can flow. All that evil can really, like, not necessarily take over you, even though Arnie really lets it kind of go, becoming like this weird Ghost Rider looking motherfucker. But at the same time, like,
Nick Cage.
Like Nick Cage after leaving Las Vegas, like
mixed if he had sex with Nick Cage from Adaptation and was really into, you know, Ghost Rider Nick Cage, like the three of them making Arnie. But that's okay. So let me ask you this though. Like, here's a crazy scene because I was fascinated by the scene at the drive-in, right? So Christine, we see the first time is when her and Arnie get out and they're like making out on the hood of the car, and the friend's so like torqued he gets almost crippled. He's like, oh, look at him making out with that girl. Ah, you know,
right.
And it has this whole supernatural nightmare tone, right? Like, did Christine somehow hit him with an illegal shot across the middle? I don't even know. But Christine seems to like it. They go to the drive-in, and she starts calling out Christine. Now, here's the weird thing, right? Christine fucks up her windshield wiper so that Arnie will scurry outside. Anything to not have an argument. I absolutely get that mindset. 100%. I'm not saying that's a sign of evil.
Absolutely.
But then a light emits inside the car. Seemingly, Christine is choking this lady. I still don't know how. Did it just startle her into gulping popcorn?
No, she had a thing caught in her throat. She had, like, whatever she was eating.
What if she's just, like, chewed her food enough? Or does Christine wait for, like, that's an oversized kernel, you know, and, like, unleash the attack? That's Ewok-level tactics, if so. Wow. And so Arnie can't get in to save her. But yet the old man is allowed to pull the old man, which, by the way, was definitely creeping on them.
Yes.
Because that moment's played really weird, too, where Arnie's like, hey, get your hands off my girl, even though he's saving her. But you're like, also, that looks like he's just trying to get her into his evil car. That just kind of goes away. We never come back to that. Wildly unacceptable moment. That guy's a creep. Mr. Fogg moves to the Midwest and starts again. But why does Christine open the fucking door and let the old man pull her out? Why does she embarrass Arnie, who she loves?
I think that's why. I mean, I
think
you
that's
just
the point.
You hit it right there, man. She's like, she embarrasses him. Like, he's trying to be tough. He's trying to be, like, literally right before he gets out of the car, they have this fight about, like, don't talk about my car like that. Like, don't do that to my car. All this shit. And then he gets out of the car to, like, tend to something that probably doesn't need, like, she's testing him, like, how dedicated are you? Are you actually gonna like try to get into this car? Or are you going to let this woman die because you love me more? Like, to me, it's like, that's that game of romantic chicken people play. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's a test. And I think letting the old man in is almost like, weak. You can't even do two things at once. Save the human girl inside here and fix me.
To be fair, I changed a windshield wiper last year because I'm an idiot. And I'm like, I'll do that. Horrible. Horrible experience.
That's
how unmechanically inclined I am. That even that, I'm like reading these instructions. I'm like, how does this work? And then I was like, do I need one? Can I just Ace Ventura in a storm? Maybe I'll get those comical glasses that just have windshield wipers on them. It was that bad. So I understand where Arnie's at. It's a tough.
I do too.
But that's what I mean.
Windshield
though, right?
wiper shit is annoying.
If she just chokes to death in a locked car, Christine is rid of her. So this almost lets you know. Is she afraid? Because this is where the cool symbiosis thing comes too. Is she afraid that if she pushes it that far, that Arnie will be like, that's the only girl that touched my stick shift. Now I hate you. You know, and he'll like leave her in Greaseball City over there and never come and ride her again.
Right.
So maybe that's what Christine does. She can't just straight up kill her, right? The same way that Christine didn't kill Dennis, sent Dennis away. It's because those people somewhat matter to Arnie.
It's sending a message. Like, I think that's an important, like, this is like a thing that, like, I actually was talking to my wife about this. She's like, do guys fight, like, when guys fight or they get angry with each other, they just, like, eventually let it go. Women plan and plot and do all this other stuff. It's cat and mouse. And she's like, you guys are fucking amateurs when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, when we don't like each other, we make it, like, we make it apparent but not so. Like, we'll just, like, grin fuck you the entire time. And I'm like, that makes sense. And then we were watching this today.
Andrea's going to have to send me an exact definition of what grin fucking is. I've never heard that term in my life. But it sounds like the name of a movie I would watch.
Probably. But in any sense, it just means you smile to someone's face even though you fucking hate them. But at the same time,
like when I grew up and you grew up in high school, right? It felt like to me, if two guys had a fight, you would make fun of each other until it got to the point where you're like, "Are we really mad about this?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, all right, well, let's start punching each other." And that was kind of how it went. There wasn't a lot of like forethought into it. And then usually once you punched it out,
it was over.
It was okay. You both got some licks in. You get pulled apart. And you're like, I don't want detentions anymore. It's fine.
Right. All the women I went to school with, their vendettas lasted years. I was always impressed. Like, having to keep up was pretty. Like, and again, when you live in like bitchy Midwest, it's really easy. So you sit there.
Hey,
and
how dare you? I won't
man.
have your coastal elite insults lobbing down on us here in the true America.
You and I both know that this is how this goes. In Northeast Ohio, there's still grudges I've heard still last.
That's what I was saying. I am like the stereotypical catty lady from high school movies of that era because I can hold a grudge.
Oh yeah,
I can hold a good grudge, so I get it.
That to me is what it is. Like Christine's testing, but also Christine's like, I got this.
That is a fucking weird extra thing to add into the I drive a devil car movie. Right? We don't know where Christine comes from or her magic. To me, the movie by the end is kind of making this argument that, like, almost like Frosty the Snowman, right? Or Pinocchio, like, she's forced into existence because someone has this massive affection for them, right? So maybe that is the thing Christine feeds on. But it's so weird that my devil car won't kill my girlfriend because it knows it'll push me to that extra element of emotion is really the separating factor for Christine to other movies of this ilk to me.
Right.
That's a weird fucking flex.
But I also think that
Let me ask you this though, one more. Why do you think it is extra important that Christine goes out to murder these bullies without Arnie being there?
Yes.
But why though? Because he knows he wants it.
Because it's Arnie. Because it's Christine proving loyalty. It's like Arnie's not strong.
Bullies too. It's almost like she's getting her own revenge for when they fucking smash her to bits.
I mean, that is absolutely. I mean, that's probably chiefly what it is. Like the wrecking crew came in, smashed that shit to bits, and she's like, "Fine, fuck these guys. Like, I'll just take care of it myself."
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, when you think about it and you extrapolate that. Christine the Christine flexes. She's saying, I don't need a man. I can do this on my own. Like, there's a lot of that going on in the movie.
But she could have done that when she was in Guy Who Needs a Sandwich and Better Lingo's yard. I mean, she does want the man.
But she's...
I was wondering if it was supposed to be an alibi scenario. Where they'd plan it out, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm running errands tonight." I couldn't have been running people down.
No, I mean, like that's just too easy. I mean, first off, it's not like she was going to leave fucking witnesses. She was killing everybody.
That poor gas station ginger who just pops his head up.
That's like that's my favorite part. Is he's just like trying to run out, and then Christine just blows them all to hell. You're like, this poor guy didn't even mean it.
I think if I remember right, that actor is the guy who was in Friday the 13th. Part 1 or 2, really? And he's one of the only goofy counselors who never met an end. Like, he just kind of disappeared. I think it's Halloween 2. Or Friday the 13th. What did I say? Friday
the greaser that gets run over in the actual parking, like in the garage, is the guy who gets electrocuted a bunch in the Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah,
That's what I remember him from. Not any other movie he's been in. It's just that scene alone. And I'm like, because you know why? Because I was watching it and I had totally forgotten he was in it. I was like, hey, that guy, he has poofy hair in another movie too. Like, there's
only like 5 of those poofy haired fellas.
Absurdly poofy hair. But yeah,
I can't say much, but yes, I know. No, but that's what I mean. Though it feels almost like an alibi, right?
It could, but I think
because I think he would be torqued,
I think it's
right?
too
Like,
simple.
because there is a Natural Born Killers version of this where she's just like, "Get in, Arnie," and he is just putting the wax coat all over that interior
for sure,
as he's just watching him and Christine's bullies be mowed down.
He is armor alling all over that steering wheel.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I'm talking about. The fact that he's left out, I was like, oh, is this criminal mastermind shit? Because it is like Harry Dean Stanton as the detective is clearly onto. They don't even make that coat of paint, blah blah blah. But you can't prove magical car. You can't prove, we saw a fiery Ghost Rider car and now it's mint again.
I truly think she did it because they fucked her up. So she's out for revenge.
But then, like, why kill the guy that owns the garage?
I mean, I don't know. That's
only because he saw that it was a ghost. It was a Duncan Dutchman or a Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship.
I guess.
I don't know. Duncan Dutchman. It's a Rick Schmitz. Indiana basketball.
Indiana Pacers. Oh my goodness! Wow, what a dig! Loved it. That was perfect. That's the pod right there.
That's how you know you're from Indiana. You think the Flying Dutchman is the Duncan Dutchman.
That's perfect, man. That's any pod that comes up with Rick Smits references. That's going to number 1 on the charts for sure. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Fuck you, Rogan. We're ascending.
I think chasing down the greasers, like the Moochie death is one of my all-time favorite.
That scene is that scene is fucking insane because we just casually throw in because Moochie has 2 of the weirder scenes in the movie, which is one when he comes and grabs Denny from behind and just grabs his dick area and is like, yeah, you like that, and it's like from
real weird
angle though,
real uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like if you're bullying. That's not the move, right? That's not how you do that.
Worst
That's not
bully
tough
ever.
bullying.
Yeah.
But then you get this. But I actually think that scene's amazing because when we see him just get dropped off in the industrial wasteland by a trucker, clearly with no destination, you're like, oh my God, he's just getting reupholstered in these truckers' cabs. You know what I mean? I really at the end of my innuendos with car terms, but
yeah, wow, you are really going
just
for it.
Getting reupholstered left and right. You know what I mean?
This might be our most innuendo laden show. I'm actually really impressed we've gone this far without running out.
I don't know hardly any more car terms unless I can work in fuzzy dice. I'm almost out. but that's our hood ornament, right? He was the hood ornament for all these truckers.
Oh, there it is. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
fuzzy dice is the last one left.
So they let him out, right? And it almost gives you this moment where you're like, oh my God. Because it's reinforcing this theme of all of these characters. It's this kind of toxic masculinity movie where it's all of these guys are just desperately trying to be something that makes them not a victim. Right? So this closeted gay kid becomes a bully, you know, just so he can try to not, get found out and picked on perhaps. So then by the time Christine's running him down, you're like, oh, like that's not the only guy that he's the only guy in the bully crew where you're like, that's not. You feel somewhat bad for him, right? Garfunkel and Travolta, you're like, those guys are just out creeping all over. Like, I don't feel bad for them.
You knew they were up to no good. But Moochie, it feels wrong. Like, I don't know. Poor Mooch, I really feel bad for him.
That scene, though, because the cool thing is when he gets cornered in the alley, it's a little too small. When Christine just revs it, and she's fucking ripping her body apart to go in and get him. Oh, my God. I mean, that scene, it's just visceral, right? This car is destroying its own body. And I don't know anything about cars, but I know car guys are all neurotic. They carry little things to wipe their car. Oh, there might be a dot on it. And to see this car, this collector's piece, rip itself apart to taste blood is fucking crazy.
Pretty awesome.
And it actually leads me to one of my favorite lines where Harry Dean Stanton's like just talking to wildly on the edge of becoming a school shooter Arnie. And he's just like, we had to scoop his legs up with a shovel. And Arnie just goes, isn't that what you're supposed to do with pieces of shit? Scoop them up with a shovel. And I was like, oh my God. But that line goes hard.
Yes. Oh my God, dude. Yeah. At that point, Arnie's like fully on his way to being a total like gaunt, Nicolas Cage ripoff shitbag. Like, God damn, dude. It's so such good. A great.
There's a universe where Nicolas Cage was in this movie, and it's the greatest film that's ever been made.
Oh, totally. No, without question. But here's the thing: Nicolas Cage was Christine, so that changes
Nicolas
everything.
Cage screaming at Harry Dean Stanton about how to properly scoop shit legs. I mean, that's just one of those like cinema fans will mourn forever. Just I could have seen it do that, right? Skip all that once bitten and all that shit. Get in on Christine early.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just go straight into this phase of your career. Yeah, but that's what I mean, right? That death to me was a really awesome signifier, right? Because
it is. Because she's willing to go the extra mile.
Yeah, and destroy herself, right?
Extra mile. Wow.
More cars. Better get our wheels rotated. I don't know what that means, but no. But it's cool though, right? Because again, between that scene and then Ghost Rider Christine, who's smashing this other dude's new car, when Christine comes out as the Ghost Rider car, that's Christine's true form. And so I love that every scene is just playing with this absolute fucking, monster truck rallying of whatever kind of facade you've set up for yourself.
I think other than the show me scene, the just sequence of her chasing down that guy running down the road as she's the Ghost Rider car is
also okay. I gotta
so
get to this
awesome.
Between him and Mooch. Like Mooch gets driven up home. He jumps on a divider.
Yeah,
stay on the goddamn divider.
There's on, man.
No way Christine's getting on the divider. Don't get down and try to run it in your sweatshirt that is way too small. I know how that sweatshirt feels. I own them still, even though I've outgrown them. You try to wear them, and you're all like, like you can't like do a full like, you know what I mean? One of the whatever that move's called for bodybuilder guys.
Yeah.
And so don't try to run it. If you're running away from a car on a paved flat surface, I don't think the world needs you. That's my theory. That's my takeaway.
But that scene, like, it's just the stillness of that scene too, where the car is driving down the street, like road, just ready to fucking run that greaser guy down, and that is to me like that's John Carpenter's like signature stuff, like the quietness of it and the stillness of that moment as it's like going down, like you're like, fuck, dude. This
While
is going to
it's
happen.
Driving fast, it still feels very, It
feels very. It's the creep. It's the creep we keep talking about in any other John Carpenter, like specifically Halloween, but like any John Carpenter movie, his pacing.
The Fog does it exceptionally well.
Fog does it too. Like his pacing is so exceptional to all these other movies, and Christine's no different. Particularly this scene, which is just so filled with, it's going to happen. There's nothing about it that's going to prevent this guy from not getting run over. But, like, the foreboding of it, you're like, oh, maybe he can, like, run into the, maybe he can stop running in the middle of the road like a fucking idiot. But, no, it's fine.
But the thing about that scene, too, is just how casual it is for us to see the villain of the movie. Well, not really the villain by the end. He might be the villain that kicked it off. But now we have our new revenge villain in Arnie and Christine.
Right.
But just the way he's just like, burn, burn, he's just like a speed bump and it's done.
Right.
It's not a big deal. And so there is this. If it's this awesome, amazing splatter death, like Mooch got almost, it makes it feel like it was worth it. But when you watch this scene and you see Christine driving back as this fucking husk of herself and then kill this, who I would argue is one of the more lovable people in the movie, is the old garage guy, right? And then you're just like, this is so worthless. I thought that was the cool revenge thing, is they were really getting into like, this is so worthless. Yeah. Like, Christine, you can just repair yourself and be a great car. But instead, you're just going to crush these teenage lives that might not have meant shit in the end, but it has a worthlessness. It's not this cool, like, yeah. It's just like, it's a bummer. Yeah. But yeah, I saw you roll your eyes about the garage guy. I love that motherfucker, man.
I like that scene a lot. Like, no, that
because him hating the young people in the movie, he comes off false, right? But what I like about him is that when Arnie's got the goods, and he's actually a hard worker, and he fixes the car, he's actually kind of nice to him. He has that moment I love where he's like, he's being gruff, but then he's like, hey, change the toilet papers. walk around, you know, it's cool. Like, he's impressed with him almost.
Right.
And this is the best line because Arnie goes, he's like, I'm going to need to think about it. And the old man immediately snaps back into, gotta hate young people. He just goes, don't think about it too long, I'll throw you out of your ass. And he walks back to, like, the smoking card game. But I love that because it's just this guy, again, his facade of tough old man who hates the young guys, right? This is a hard-working guy's trying to put food on the table garage. He actually has a soft spot for this kid who's like, he's going to carry on our legacy.
Right.
And, like, he shows one moment of weakness, and Arnie doesn't immediately return it with, like, hugs and kisses. He's like, fuck you!
I don't know if you noticed this.
That's one of my favorite moments.
I don't know if you noticed this, but this was, other than Arnie's death at the end of the movie, I noticed that this movie is way less bloody than every other John Carpenter movie we watched.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, The Fog's actually not that bloody either.
What's that?
The Fog.
The Fog's
also
not that
like
bloody.
A ton of blood.
The Fog's not that bloody. It has like the eyeballs being gouged out's enough gore.
Right, but
like
it's still like dry sockets. It's not even.
This one to me is like every, like, for instance, when that guy gets crushed by when Christine crushes that guy.
But don't you feel that in your body more than almost any John Carpenter kill?
Absolutely. I was just about to say that.
I was going to say, I watched that Palm Springs
brutal.
movie, and they have a scene where that happens. And I had a friend in high school that happened to. And watching he went back out to his car, right, to get something. So he leaned in, the door's open. A drunk driver veered and fucking pinned him to his driver's side door in the front of his car, and his whole lower half was, like, smashed. Watching what that did to that kid, I think every time I see that in a movie now, it's like one of those things, like, if you have, like, the tragedy happen to you, you're like, nah, that's not very... Like, that kid went through hell to get his life back on track. And thank God he's doing great now, but... that one, when they killed Mooch, like, that hurt me bad. Yeah. It's like, oh, you feel like you're gonna die watching it.
Totally
tough. Let's talk about the ending, though. Actually, I wanted to run you by that.
Sure.
I think it's kind of the big thing we haven't discussed besides the parent, right? This ending scene is all kinds of fucking weird to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? It's such a weird kind of showdown because scratching Christine to send her the message is a really funny way to send the message, right? Yeah. I like that. The plan seems fine. Get her in here. We'll smash her with this bulldozer thing, right?
Sure.
I must say, they got me with the Christine's like, ha-ha! And fucking comes like Three Musketeering out from under the tarp and shit.
Yes.
That really got me. Because it's like, you've been watching them in here for how long? Right. And you waited until they're already in the armored vehicle? Like, what are you doing? But this is like the really weird part that I wanted to ask you about. Why does Christine not automatically buckle Arnie in?
Oh, because she's done with him, man.
No, because see, I don't. Okay, now I thought that's what you say, but here's the scene that really jumped out at me watching this. The scene when Arnie's dead in the office, right? And his body's laying there.
Yeah.
We have that thing they do a couple times in the movie where it's as if Christine is showing something to Arnie, right? The show me. And it's a little on the nose with the headlights, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Like boop, right? And, she floods Arnie with this light. This, now you can see clearly.
Right.
When Arnie is in the lights in that scene, it gives him this kind of, martyr saint look in the picture.
Yeah.
I think Christine is actually really upset and forlorn by that. I think she really regrets that Arnie is dead now. Because it's weird because the ending feels like a series of errors that they should be better than. Yeah. But also, I think in that scene when Arnie has that little glow, it reminded me of the scene in Lost Boys where Kiefer Sutherland, the vampire, has this little glow at the end. And you're like, oh, he was just a kid. He was just a kid who got caught up in this curse. Right. I think she actually is then incensed into rage, right? To try to get that girl that might have been. That's the thing. I don't know if she blames the girl for what happened to Arnie, but why not fucking buckle him in? Buckle him in.
Because that's not what the leader of the pack would have done.
It's not butch enough.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the leader of the pack fucking beefed it on his motorcycle. I mean, that's the ultimate tough guy thing. If Arnie's going to, buckle up, that's not the point of this, man. The point of this is
I guess your point is the chicken scene, right? Where he's just chugging beers and slamming it.
My point is that loving cars can be dangerous, man. And,
But Arnie has that amazing line where he's like, love will consume everything, right? Isn't that what he says? He's like, love has a voracious appetite.
Love
eats everything.
Love eats everything. Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. It feels lost in that moment, right? Or maybe it's like they can't love all the way unless they're on the edge.
I think that Arnie can't love Christine unless he's all like he's now fully transformed. I think Arnie can't love Christine unless he's all the way on the edge.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, he's chasing the dragon.
Yeah, Arnie can't go back to being who he was. Arnie has to be this guy because this is what Christine loves. So this is what Christine wants. It's the whole thing. I mean, again, everything in this movie screams like the concept of just like weird, kind of this psychosexual like play on masculinity and like what are you willing to give up? Like what are you willing to give up to be in love?
Right.
Like, and what are you trying to be in love with? Like,
that's
trying
the
to be
Christine
in love with
question. Why pick the Arnies? Because you see at the end when she's trying to drive away, and this bulldozer's just stopping, or whatever those fucking things are called, are stopping her from getting to the girl. Right? There's this really cool scene where she's just this shadowy figure, right, in like silhouette, and Christine's just trying to get the car's like regrowing as it's getting smashed constantly.
Yeah.
The fucking big cat just driving right through the middle. That was such a fucking cool scene.
So awesome. And it's like playing that tune as the movie. Oh,
yeah.
God.
But it's just like, this is a woman like, you took my man, and she's coming for her.
Totally.
I thought that showed me that she really did love Arnie and did not want him to die in that moment.
I don't know. I feel like it's more selfish than that. I think it's that.
Maybe it's just a simple, unprotected sex metaphor. Maybe Arnie's the one seed that gets through.
True. Perhaps Arnie is the one guy that got through.
He's the aborted Fonz of this movie.
From his fuzzy dice. Oh, who had fuzzy dice on their? Who had it on their bingo card?
The fuzzy dice. I'm sorry, one got. It's just too much hair. No condoms can fit. No condoms can fit, and one Arnie got through. But no, I thought that was cool. I like at the end when we see the car bending again. I like that last moment too with the car bending again, because it's telling you this version of American macho-ness, right? Mm-hmm. This version of a guy who thinks he can just like fucking slap people into,
right,
in line, and we're gonna go backwards in time to a time when it was great. You could just drive in your car and listen to music. That guy will always exist and will always be a problem for all of us.
You know what's funny? I actually think if they remade it now, it would be either a Tesla or a Prius, and it would be like a real uppity person bitching about it.
Are you saying that because I'm a Prius owner? That's horrible of you. We're a nice, gentle folk, us Prius owners.
Thanks.
Let me tell you who it'd be first off. I live in the neighborhood where guys have to almost get like a fucking kitchen stepladder to get in their trucks that they do not use for work. They seem to just wash them in their driveways all the time and drive them way too fast with the... This is another thing about car guys. The car guy who plays his music the loudest always has the worst taste in music. Yes. Right? He's like, this shitty tune's on. I better blast it. My truck has extra cab space that I only use for subwoofers. That's another thing. By the way, I had people message me and like, "Are you intentionally always mispronouncing words?" And I was like, "Yes." But, but I was like, I just did it like 10 times in a row.
I've had that conversation with many people who listen to our show.
I know. They're like, does he know? Is he just a moron? I'm like, yes and yes. But no, these guys are just like, just wash his car and play like shitty Beer for My Horses real loud and rip ass through the neighborhood. Christine now is a giant Ford truck that gets 8 miles to the gallon in the midst of global warming for a guy who works at State Farm. That's what Christine is now.
No, I like my
not
Tesla
us
thing.
gentle Prius folk.
No, I
not us gentle Prius folk.
I like now instead Christine becomes like reinforces the uppity Tesla people. Like, oh God. Yeah.
Also, I think if I drove my Tesla into Mooch, it would just like bounce off. I don't think this is a true story of a Tesla owner. We took it through a car wash once, one of those ones where you have to like get on the track and it floats you through. We got to the end, and my wife hits it, and it doesn't have enough power to get out of the little thing that holds the car. So she's flooring it, and I'm using my fat body to rock as hard as I can to get just enough momentum so that when the tire rolls over the like 1-inch impediment, it goes,
Right.
and we peeled out. And I was like, that's the first ever burnout by a Prius. So like, yeah, I don't think you can murder people in a Prius of death.
In any sense, ultimately,
Unless they get murdered by a like, oh, I can't listen to any more NPR.
Ultimately, I think Christine is. It's interesting. Like Christine to me feels like very passionate John Carpenter stuff, and there's things in this movie that'd be like only John Carpenter can make this work. Yeah. So it's interesting that he looks at it as a job, because to me, this is one of the dark horse great movies of his oeuvre. You know?
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's one of the great underrated movies of his, but just horror in general.
Yeah,
because it's doing all this extra stuff. Whereas American Graffiti is this love letter to that culture. This is kind of the, like, you know, if that's what American Graffiti is, right? The love letter to 50s car culture. This is the Dear Stan, the Eminem song version of that culture. You know what I mean? Yes. Like, it's a little darker. It's weird. It has all this extra imagery attacking this idea of, you know, that great American past, this great American man, and kind of deconstructing that and showing, you know, how destructive all this can be when you're really trying to be something false all the fucking time.
Right.
I just think this movie has so many layers that it does not get credit for, and to lump it in with other killer car movies, I think is insulting. I think this is by far the best of the evil car movies.
It's unfortunate because, this is definitely the top.
It's the one that has all the extra stuff, right? Like, Maximum Overdrive is wildly fun. It doesn't have all the extra layers. You know what I mean? Right. It's just a fucking phenomenal movie. It's an absolute perfect movie to end John Carpenter month on, because, again, I think what it does, John Carpenter is a great person to do Stephen King-style adaptations, because he really is so good at putting these kind of believable male archetypes on the screen. And watching how they deal with this fucking degradation of their masculinity and their power. The reality is they thought they've known it. And I think that is what John Carpenter is the master of. And I think Christine might be his most distilled version of that theme.
I wouldn't, but I would agree.
It's really fucking good movie, guys.
It's awesome.
We will miss covering John Carpenter for a while. We will be back this October in our never-ending horror movie everyday October. We are doing Halloween, so we've already recorded some Halloween, so we'll get a little more John Carpenter. To be fair, though, we are running low on John Carpenter, so it'll be a while before we're back. We'll be excited when we are. We have enjoyed so much spending the month with our Carpenter, right? We would give him excellent reviews. Tell you guys to call a Carpenter too, man. Next month, we'll do the announcement now. Next month, Alex has dropped a theme on me that actually made my jaw drop. I'm like, that's an awesome theme.
It's too good. I can't believe, honestly, we haven't done it yet, actually.
It seems like we should have.
It seems like something we should have covered already.
Right. So next month, our theme is the pod spawns evil. Is that it?
No. The pod's evil spawn.
The pod's evil spawn, right? So this is evil children movies. So Alex picked 2, I picked 2. We might add some more, but baseline, we're covering The Bad Seed, The Good Son, Village of the Damned, and Orphan. So a fucking stellar lineup of bastardly children.
Super excited.
And there are some others that I think are worth talking about that we might get to as well.
We really should talk about Omen 2, Damien, which is like one of my all-time faves.
That's true. We still have some Omen see it. I mean, it's really fun. We have some guests that are going to be coming on next month. Maybe we'll get them to talk about some of these. So again, guys, as always, please take a second, leave us a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcast app. Find us and shout us out on your social medias. We're there. You're there. Let's grow this party. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. And you can watch us play with our fuzzy dice on our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. So that's it. Bon voyage, John Carpenter. You were exactly what we needed. You are the master that we kneel to.
God bless.
We'll be back with our evil fucking spawns next week with The Bad Seed, which is just chef's kiss. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.